Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today, at long last, I am finally back in the world of DC Comics. Honestly, this video was created simply because I felt like it's been a while since I focused my attentions on this channel on DC Comics. So we're going to be looking at a list video today that I prepared called 10 DC Comics I Have to Talk About. Now, some of these I've mentioned before in previous videos. Some of these are some of my favorite DC works I've read in the recent years, and a few of the books you'll see in today's list are simply some I found on my bookcase that I wanted to speak to a little bit more. Before we jump into the list though, I would like to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, perhaps some of the books on this very list, I encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything on the site you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's probably the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now go ahead and get comfortable and let's get started with today's list. Kicking off the list today in no particular order, we have a personal favorite of mine. This is Batman White Knight by Sean Murphy. This is the series that kicked off a whole White Knight universe over at DC. So if you haven't guessed it yet, this is outside of the mainstream DC continuity. It's set in a world where basically Batman is painted as more of a dangerous vigilante. Public mistrust is kind of going against him. He's getting a little more aggressive and brutal. And it's actually in a world where they cure Joker. At least that is by all appearances what we have here in the beginning of this story, White Knight. In fact, that title is kind of in reference to what they make Joker to be in a lot of this, I would say. And that's really just the beginning of the story, like the first issue in this collection. What I really love about what Murphy's done here is that they've created a kind of believable Batman universe that turns everything on its head. To see how Bruce Wayne, Batman, tries to come back from the edge of everything, and just seeing how they play with the character of Joker, I think it's all really fascinating, and honestly a profound character study for both of some of Batman's mythos' biggest characters. I also like how Murphy rolls in some other kind of supporting characters. Like one of my favorite characters we get in this whole universe is the character of Harley Quinn. I think the agency that Sean Murphy gives to this character in this work, it's just one of my favorite things to see, easily one of my favorite interpretations of the character of Harley Quinn. That, along with Harleen, which may or may not be another book on this list today. Again, just some of my favorite depictions of that character. But this comic really boasts some fantastic action sequences. Like I said earlier, some great character study work here. It's definitely a character-driven narrative. It's also a fascinating kind of what-if story. If you're a fan of the Batman universe in general, I would consider this a must-read. The central story is a ton of fun, and it really spun off into successful sequels and other various spin-off projects that are still going on. I have really loved every entry of this universe I've read thus far, and it all began here. Huge recommendation for Bat fans out there. Don't miss out on Batman White Knight. And would you look at that, next up on the list is the aforementioned Harleen by Stjepan Sejic. This is part of DC Comics' Black Label, which is an imprint within DC Comics currently that kind of gears towards more mature or adult-centric content. I will say there's nothing overly explicit in this collection, luckily. It has some darker psychological themes, instances of violence, but again, nothing too crazy or sexual or things like that. But we have a really, really good work here. This is sort of a take on a Harley Quinn origin story, but it's profoundly more than that. It's really a psychological thriller that is a complete dismantling of a woman's just psyche, really. It's also a story that shows her fascination and inevitable infatuation with the character of Joker, which I like to see. I think her, as being the primary character here, her perspective on Batman throughout this is also interesting. So if you're worried if you're reading a Harley book without any Batman, rest assured there is still some Batman appearances throughout this book, but it really does centralize and focus on the main character of Dr. Harleen Quinzel, who will become Harley Quinn. The Joker, of course, is also a main character here, and he's depicted rather handsomely. I'm not sure if this is the way of the creator trying to say this is how Harley sees Joker, or if that's just how he looks in this world, but those kind of questions kept me guessing. There's some deep psychological work here being done. It's intensely character driven, it's really well paced, and it's just suspenseful. You're never fully relaxed reading Harleen, and that was one of the things I loved about it. It's presented in this boxy, oversized format, which I thought was just a beautiful work of art. It is 3 issues long, the issues are pretty large, and it really just rounds out for a great graphic novel reading experience. And if I haven't said it yet, the art from Stjepan Sejic, who both does the writing and artwork, the art is just second to none. It's absolutely stunning, it's gorgeous. I did do a full review on this title earlier in my channel, and it's a book I think about quite often. This, along with the interpretation of Harley Quinn we got in the White Knight universe, are among my favorite interpretations for this character. A really stunning work, and if you've ever been interested in the character of Harley Quinn, I would consider this a must-read. Next on this list today, I wanted to throw in a few Silver Age DC Comics reads because I just thought it'd be fun to talk about, and for that I have the Green Lantern Silver Age Collection Volume 1 paperback. This is about half of the first Silver Age Green Lantern Omnibus, which is an oversized hardcover format. DC was releasing these paperbacks once upon a time. They had Golden, Silver, and Bronze Age titles released in this format. I really liked it, but I think it was a bit short-lived. I have a handful of them still in my collection. I've kind of gained some and lost some over the years, but they are a really fun book. I know that DC is now releasing the DC Finest line, which is kind of a rival to the Marvel Epic collections. I imagine that's really going to take over what space this once occupied, but maybe be on the lookout in case you ever want to check out Silver Age Green Lantern. I think that this is among one of the strongest DC Silver Age titles. This and The Flash are some of just my favorite stuff from this period at DC Comics. We lean heavy into the science fiction, fantastical, kind of spacefaring kind of genres for this. We have in here the origin of Hal Jordan's Green Lantern, how he gets the power ring from the dying alien Abin Sur, and then goes on to his own superheroic exploits. I really, again, just think this is a fun Silver Age title. The colors are beyond beautiful. Everything jumps right off of the page. Again, I think one of the things that really knocks this over the park for me as a Silver Age read is just the heavy science fiction influence. It has that kind of 50s, 60s futurist science fiction kind of trappings and look to it, which I always really enjoy. I think the character of Hal Jordan is fun. The art we get throughout too, just from the different artists, I just think is really well done. How they do the character layouts and body models, it's just really fascinating. Like some of the flight sequences for Hal Jordan, I just think it's just really well done, and honestly the art still holds up to this day. I do think, is there parts that this drags a bit? Yeah, and I like to cherry pick books like this. I don't always binge read cover to cover my Silver Age works, but these are ones that are always great for me personally as a reader to have on the shelf and read an adventure or two here and there, as just about every issue is a standalone story and a kind of one and done self-contained read. Anyway, if you're looking for a fun Silver Age book, definitely recommend Green Lantern. Next on our list of 10 DC books I have to talk about, we're going to whip out the first omnibus on this list, and that is Superman by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. Now, this run is one I admittedly am still making my way through, but I am loving it, and it's one I plan to do a full review on the channel when I've completed it. After reading Tomasi and Gleason's run on Batman and Robin, I had a feeling Superman would be coming up next. In fact, these omnibuses kind of mirror each other. If you've never seen their Batman and Robin omnibus, when you compare it to Superman, the design aesthetic and even the covers of the books kind of mirror each other or match. You can actually probably see my review of Batman and Robin omnibus if you'd like. But anyway, going back to Superman, this book is in the rebirth era for Superman, so this is after New 52, and in fact this omnibus picks up after the end of New 52, so it kind of does a little bit of a bridge explaining what happened at the end of that and kind of setting the stage for this new Superman and kind of everything going on there. there. And this is really a Superman and son kind of book. We're introduced to John Kent, and we have him as part of a family. It's, Clark, Lois, and John. And we have Superman kind of trying to teach his son as he gets new powers, kind of how to be and live up to the legacy. But really, more than that, he's just being a great father. And we have not only Superman through the lens of fatherhood, but we also have the young John Kent as an emerging hero and just son to this incredible dad who he's trying to figure out how he fits in his shoes and becomes his own man. We have a lot of fun appearances from Batman and Damian and some of the other great DC characters. The art, of course, throughout this from the incredible Patrick Gleason is just unrivaled in many ways. It's beautiful. It pops right from the page. The coloring is phenomenal. And again, this was a run that was recommended to me often, and it really, really doesn't disappoint. Everything I've read so far has been an absolute page turner. And again, once I finish it, I do plan to do a full review. I'd love to hear in the comments, though, have you read Superman by Tomasi Gleason? What do you think about it on the whole? And have you read Super Sons? That's another series by them I've been curious about, especially after reading Batman and Robin and now reading this. Anyway, would love feedback on that if you're a fan of Tomasi and Gleason. And let's go ahead and go to the next series. Next on this list is Mr. Miracle by Tom King and Mitch Gerads. Before we jump into this, just a huge thank you to Jake over at The Brave and the Boys, friend of the channel, friend in general. He went ahead and sent me this and a Superman book by Tom King that I've been really eager to read. So thank you so much, Jake, for the great gift. If somehow you're not subscribed to The Brave and the Boys, I highly recommend it. Him and his partner over there, Jordan, do great work on that channel. Really, really incredible stuff. Anyway, going back to Mr. Miracle, this is a book that's been on my to-be-read list forever. I have always wanted to check it out. They just released an Absolute edition fairly recently, so I think Jake had this in his collection as a standard size hardcover, and he was happy to pass it along. But this really contains all of Tom King and Mitch Gerads' maxi series for Mr. Miracle, and wow, this one is a trip so far. So this is another one that admittedly I'm still making my way through, and yet I had to talk about it. So I feel like it fit the bill for today's video. But this is really a look at, I'm going to say, mental health. Everything I've seen so far, it's an exploration of mental health and kind of existentialism, and it really takes apart these characters that came back. I think Jack Kirby came up with these characters, if I'm not mistaken, during the kind of New Gods, Fourth World kind of era. But Mr. Miracle in general is a really fascinating character. He was born from the High Father, and then he was given to Darkseid to raise as part of kind of a peace agreement. Anyway, this takes place in adulthood as his life is sort of unraveling or at kind of a crossroads. The art from Mitch Gerads is haunting, interesting, visually stunning, and the journey we go on for Mr. Miracle, his wife, and the supporting cast of characters, it's just unlike anything I've read, especially from Tom King, who I am a fan of. Again, I am still reading through it, and this is my very first time, so I am curious on where I'll land once I finish it out. I do plan on reviewing this story once I finish this edition, but I can't wait to talk about it, and I had to start early when I thought about books to talk about. I thought, why not throw on kind of some recent or currently reading books as well, because I'm captivated by it. It's really fascinating, and again, the visuals are absolutely evocative and interesting. Would love to know in the comments here as well, are you a fan of Tom King and Mitch Gerads' Mr. Miracle? Let me know, and let's keep this list right on going. Okay, throwing back to the Silver Age once again, one final time for this video. This is The Flash Silver Age Volume 1 paperback from DC Comics. I already gave the whole spiel about this line DC was doing back in the day, but yes, this is the early Silver Age Flash stuff, so this is the origin of Barry Allen's Flash. And wow, is this just such a fun spectacle from the Silver Age. Flash to me has always been a very fun DC character, but when I think about Silver Age DC Comics, this is actually my favorite in DC's library that I've read to date. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the splash of colors we get from the Flash, or if I love the way they convey the movement. I know I've always been a huge fan of Flash's cavalcade of villains, his rogues gallery, and we get to see so many of them step onto the scene in this first volume. It really is a treat. I think the Flash is a really unique character because yes, we have some science fiction background and things in his mythos, but he's just a larger than life character that's also so good-natured. I know Superman is often considered the blue Boy Scout, and with good reason, but in that same level of virtue and morality, I would squarely put Barry Allen's Flash. You pair that again with the great handful of villains he has, and just his unique power set that always leads to unique and fascinating visual work, even all the way back here in the Silver Age, and you have one power-packed franchise. Again, Silver Age sometimes feels dated to modern readers, especially if you're used to modern storytelling styles and you haven't read Silver Age, but if you'd like to go back to the beginnings of some of these characters, I would definitely recommend Flash. I think it's a ton of fun. Like I said for the Green Lantern, it's a really great book to just pick up an issue, read it, and put it back, because all of the issues are one-and-done kinds of storytelling. But I think Flash is just a fascinating character. This is a book that I've enjoyed when I have read it. I spent some time, I think, going over the origin of Flash at one point on the channel. I don't think I've finished reviewing this book because I'm still in the last couple stories, but I still recommend it, and it's one I'd like to talk about because I wanted to do a DC video that I span different generations of kind of subject matter, so I had to throw in a couple Silver Age reads. Anyway, this is the Flash Silver Age. And hey, if you're liking this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. I'm always doing comic book list videos like this, reviews, unboxings, shorts, and more. Thank you for considering. Now let's keep this list right on going. Next up, arguably my most surprising entry on this list, Batman Superman from New 52, Volume 1, Cross World. This was such a fascinating series. I still didn't complete this run, though I did finish this volume and highly enjoyed it. This is a standard edition hardcover release from DC, again coming out from the beginning of the New 52 era. This was written by Greg Pak with art from Jay Lee, and that was a huge selling point for me, not only having some of my favorite DC characters teamed up, the world's finest, of course, but having the artwork from Jay Lee. This was just a really, really fascinating book. I do think Greg Pak rarely fails to deliver, but seeing that coupled with the art from Jay Lee, just wow, this was a really fun little book. It has both Batman and Superman, as the title obviously suggests. We get to see so much of their differences and discrepancies and idiosyncrasies on full display in this collection. It definitely is a case of opposites or contrasts, at least in the early part of this run. We deal with kind of multiple universes and blendings of characters in a unique way that I won't spoil right here in this video, but definitely get a good sampling of Batman and Superman, and you get to see kind of them building their relationship and learning to push through their differences. And again, the art from Jay Lee, it just looks surreal and out of this world and kind of mystical in a funny way. I was first introduced to the art of Jay Lee when I was actually reading the Dark Tower comic book adaptations from Marvel back in the day, and ever since then I could easily point out artwork from Jay Lee, and whenever I see it show up I'm always really excited. But I think the art we get here is something truly special because we get so many of the main important characters of DC Comics just kind of made by him here. I really thought this was a fun run, and it was a compelling little story. I'm aware that the New 52 era can be polarizing for some. I have always been a huge fan of that. This was the era I was coming up as a comic book collected edition reader and collector, so I always have a soft spot in there for me. But I also think it's easy to have kind of the heavy hitters from that generation of DC Comics, but there's a lot of little series like this that really just snuck under the radar and are becoming kind of hidden gems, at least in my mind. This was a book I had to talk about. I'm curious if anyone's read this run. I'd be curious to finish reading this run eventually, but this first volume, like I said, it really hits home for me. I really enjoyed it, and I just had to talk about it today. Next on today's DC Comics list, Catwoman Lonely City by Cliff Chiang. Like Harleen, this is part of DC Comics' Black Label imprint, again suggested for more mature or adult readers. This is another case of one that's not too overly explicit, but just some more adult kind of themes or storytellings happening. This is set in kind of a dystopian future of Gotham City, or near future, where basically everything has become kind of a militant state. Catwoman has been imprisoned for the last, I think, decade or so. This is post-Batman and Gotham City, and we have Catwoman kind of coming to terms being in a city that is her home that she no longer recognizes. She tries to take back on her mantle as Catwoman to finish out one final favor for our Dark Knight, and that's really what Catwoman Lonely City is all about. It goes across maybe 3 or 4 issues with this lush and beautiful artwork, also from Chiang, who did both writing and illustrating of this incredible work. But it also just tackles some really deep themes about aging and purpose and legacy, while also just being a kick-butt great story. There's elements of this that feel absolutely vigilante heroism, there's parts that feel like a heist story, and there's parts that just feel like a deep, heavy character drama. This is really unlike anything I've read from DC, and something I would love to read more like. I was first introduced to Chiang with his artwork in the New 52 Wonder Woman run from Brian Azzarello and him, but seeing him double duty as writer and illustrator, it just leaves me wanting more from this incredible creator. The artwork again here in Catwoman Lonely City is definitely a huge selling point for me though, especially in this overlarge kind of boxy format. It's a real treat. I loved reviewing this on the channel when I got to maybe a year or two ago, and it's one I still think about quite often. I would really love to see what else Chiang has for us in the years ahead, because I'm a huge fan of this creator. After what I saw in Wonder Woman, here with this, and even I think he did the artwork for Paper Girls. Again, just gorgeous stuff that always jumps right off the page. This could easily be sold just as an art book, but the fact that we also have an incredible Catwoman story, this is a no-brainer pickup for me from DC Comics, and one I would highly recommend to many readers out there. I think you would enjoy Catwoman Lonely City. Next on this list, more Batman and more Tom King. Yes, this is Batman Killing Time by Tom King and David Marquez from DC Comics. This is a really fun little book. It's a standard size hardcover that collects the entire miniseries of Batman Killing Time, and this is a fascinating one. I do think it's set in the main continuity of Batman, at least as far as I can tell, but it's set early in the crime fighter's career. In fact, this is set safely in the era where Catwoman is just a femme fatale supervillain for Batman, which plays into the story quite nicely. We also have the Riddler, I think Killer Croc, and frankly more villains that show up throughout this. This is definitely a fast-paced action thriller of a Batman story that also has some great psychological underpinnings, twists and turns, and more. For those wondering, this is actually not set within the main Tom King Batman run. He did a full run on Batman after the Scott Snyder era that I've really enjoyed. I have that whole run in deluxe hardcover, but this actually takes place as a complete standalone story that again happens earlier in the crime fighter's career. If you enjoyed Tom King's Batman, I would definitely recommend picking this up, but even if you weren't a fan of Tom King's era of Batman, I think you might still have a shot of really enjoying the story here, because I do think that this feels dissimilar enough to what we got in his later run that you could enjoy it as just a sweeping and great standalone Batman tale. There's really more than meets the eye with this story as well. Stay for kind of the action entertainment and continue to dwell on it long afterwards for everything else Tom King and team inject into this work. A really fascinating mini-series, and honestly one of my favorite standalone Batman stories I've had the pleasure to read in maybe the last 5 years. I don't think this book is talked about enough. The artwork is gripping from page 1 all the way to the amazing conclusion. I also love the way Tom King utilized the Riddler and Catwoman in particular in this book. I don't really see these characters used this way as often anymore, and I think it was striking, interesting, and just worked really well for their characters and the dynamic with our favorite dark detective. Let me know in the comments if you've read Killing Time. Again, one of my preferred Batman reads of the last several years. And rounding out our list today for the 10 DC Comics I had to talk about, we're looking at the second half of the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo Batman run on the New 52. And to do that, this is Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo Omnibus Volume 2. This omnibus includes storylines like Batman Endgame, Super Heavy, Last Night on Earth, and many more. And I know that this back half of Snyder's run is often criticized or polarizing, but here I am today to defend it. I love this run, and honestly, I love the back half of the run. Do I think that the first volume in this omnibus set, that includes stories like The Court of Owls, Death of the Family, 0 Year, does that hit harder, and is it a stronger volume than the back half in this volume 2? I'm going to just go ahead and say yes, I do think that those were stronger Batman stories, but do I still really love the back half of the Snyder Capullo Batman run? You bet I do. I really love these stories. I think Endgame is a really, really interesting Joker story. I think that Super Heavy took some big swings for the Batman mythos and for some of the supporting cast in the Batman universe that I think were pretty daring. And it's hard in this video because I don't want to get into spoilers, but Snyder and Capullo really changed things up for Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and so many more characters in the back half of this run that I was riveted. It was so fascinating to me when I read it through the first time, and every time I revisit, I'm always appreciative for the swings they took. They really kind of bucked the status quo and the norm, and they gave a truly unique Batman story. The fact that we also get some of the backup stories as well as The Last Night on Earth, which is kind of a fun mini-series that it almost feels like a last Batman story, I think it really rounds out this omnibus set quite nicely, and it really is a great salute to what I consider one of the best Batman comic book eras of all time. Again, I'm a huge fan of this run from beginning to end, and that does include this second omnibus, and honestly, looking at it right now, I think it's time I give this a review. I need to talk about this more than I'm going to be able to on this video, but yes, I'm a huge fan of Scott Snyder, I'm a huge fan of Greg Capullo, and I love this run, even the back half, and because of that, I had to talk about it today. Definitely one of the motivating factors for this video, and I'd love to hear if there are other Bat Snyder fans out there, even those that like the back half as I do. Okay, and that's going to start to bring us to a close today for 10 DC Comics I have to talk about. Again, a huge inspiration for this video was simply because I have not done service to DC Comics and comic works in quite a while. I'm not really sure why that is. I generally lean Marvel, and I am trying to do more independent comics this year, but I need to get back in the world of DC. I know so many of you guys that watch this channel are huge DC fans. In fact, when I've polled a lot of you guys on our daily community posts, a lot of people mentioned that they're maybe first and foremost DC Comics fans. So let me know in the comments, do I need to do more DC comic reviews on the channel? Are you satisfied with the amount you're getting? I do definitely plan to roll some more reviews out in the coming weeks and months on the channel, but I'd love to get your feedback. Additionally, have you read any of the books on today's list? Do you have any thoughts on them you'd like to share? Would love to get some conversations going in the chat or in the comments section, I should say. And also, what are some DC comic books that you would love to talk about? Share your recommendations and thoughts as well in the comments. I'd love to hear all of that in the comments section. And thank you all so much for watching. This one was a real blast to put together, and it makes me eager to get in and read more DC Comics. So I'm coming for you, Mr. Miracle, and the rest of the books in my queue, hopefully. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.